Welcome to the Astro Psyche. It's great to have you here. This is your weekly astrology forecast for June 10th through the 16th. And this week is about cultivating a flexible state of mind. We have some very dynamic astrology. We're continuing to experience Mars square Pluto. We're going to talk about that more this week. We're also having Venus square Neptune and some other things that are happening this week that are really asking us to look at what's happening now, what's the future potential, and how can we be in a flexible state with all of these experiences. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and an astrologer, and I'm so honored to be able to share the astrology of this week with you as I see it from a psychological perspective. So we are continuing to experience Mars square Pluto because Mars moved into Taurus last week. So that, if I'm remembering right, it was Sunday the 9th that Mars moved into Taurus, and this immediately created this square with Pluto. And so Mars square Pluto can feel kind of like a challenging, I don't know if grinding is quite the way that I want to explain it, but it's kind of this like really wanting to do something and really wanting to do something very intensely. Pluto is about intensity of experience. Pluto is also about uncovering things that have previously been disowned, rejected, projected, or hidden in some kind of way. And so when Mars makes an aspect to Pluto, Mars sort of knocks on Pluto's door and is like, hey, anything that's involving being direct, being decisive, taking action, anything like that that has been unconscious, disowned, rejected, etc., sort of depressed or suppressed into the psyche. I want to take a hold of that and take that out right now, and I want to experience that in an intense way. And so at a practical level, this can look like realizing frustrations or realizing that you want to decisively act, or maybe I think it can also, I want to say sometimes it can kind of be a little more nuanced than that. So it can be in a more explicit or overt way be experienced as frustration or agitation or kind of just like a general crankiness or agitation. So if you happen to be feeling that this week, know that there is something here that's coming up to be experienced and to be processed. And I think in another way, in Plutonian fashion, it can be something that is sort of like just underneath the layer of consciousness. And so it might be that there is a feeling of agitation or grumpiness, or kind of like feeling maybe like feeling a sense of anxiety even around taking action or being decisive or confrontation in some kind of way. And so I just want you to notice what's coming up there. I think that when we have Mars making an aspect to any planet, it's always really good to look at, okay, where are you being called to take action? How are you being called to take action? And can you give yourself a moment, a pause to like sit with, okay, what is it that I actually want to do here, so that you can give yourself time and space to really decide what it is that you want to do, so that you're avoiding having to backtrack something. And I think that is especially the case when we're having Mars-Pluto here. So yeah, I think really notice what is coming up for you. Again, you might be like, Shawna, I feel great. I don't have any of these agitated feelings, and that is fabulous. I think that this especially, like all transits, this is going to feel more personal for folks who maybe have this connecting in to their natal birth chart or to a current experience that they're having. So I think that also I want to say Mars-Pluto can connect into situations around power dynamics or assertiveness, or where it feels like we're negotiating how when, where, in what way we want to be assertive and how we want to address situations where it feels like there is a power dynamic or a power imbalance. And if you're not experiencing this, maybe someone in your life is, and it can help you to understand a bit about what might be going on for them. Okay, so that's a big part of what is happening this week. And another piece of what's happening this week is that we have the Sun and Mercury making a conjunction. So there's a lot that's happening in Gemini within the context of this month within Gemini season. And last week we had Venus and the Sun making a conjunction, bringing new insight and awareness to relational issues. And now we have Mercury doing the same thing. So this moment is really about gaining insight, gaining awareness, gleaning a silver lining. It can be like maybe, so I think we want to also keep in mind that any planet, any visible planet that is near the Sun becomes invisible when it's sort of hovering around the Sun, like within 15 degrees or so. And so this means that that planet is invisible, and we take that symbolically. There is something that we cannot see. And there's also, by the very nature of it, the Sun being connected to insight and awareness and consciousness, there's also something that is getting connected in here that is becoming conscious. So it's kind of this planting, seeding, this like, it's almost like the way that I'm feeling into it as I'm feeling into the astrology of this week is it's kind of like, have you ever had a dream or a situation happen and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening here. And it kind of, things click into place for you. And it might be something big, it might be something significant, but the Sun conjunct Mercury is kind of like that, where it's like, oh, okay, like I get it. There's kind of this aha moment. And I don't think that it necessarily is a symbol of everything that is complicated into your life coming into focus. You know, if that happens, that's fabulous. I hope that for you. And it feels kind of just like this little clicking into place of something. Now, the other part of this configuration is that the Sun and Mercury will be making an exact square to Saturn in Pisces. And so Saturn is about, in this case, confronting a truth or confronting multiple truths. And so, yes, a square with Saturn can feel a bit tense or challenging sometimes, but in this case, I feel like Saturn is coming in to allow for a realization around something. And in Saturn form, it might be a realization around limitations, responsibilities, or simply what you want to do in a practical kind of way. So I would kind of be noticing that. And yeah, see what comes to you this week. And I think that there is a lot to, there's a lot to the insights that you have, and that even if it feels like things are not super clear, that the data that you can gain from your psyche, from yourself, whether that is ideas you have, daydreams, dreams during sleep, divinations that you're doing, you're sort of like putting together the pieces of the puzzle, or following the breadcrumbs, so to speak. That's the symbolic, metaphorical vibe that I'm getting with this particular transit. Now, the other piece of this is that connects into this configuration is that we have a first quarter moon in Virgo. And so the first quarter moon is in between the new moon and the full moon. So it's that quarter. This is happening on Thursday, the 13th of June. And we're within the context of the new moon in Gemini that happened on June 6th. So we're within that Gemini new moon lunar cycle. The 6th of June was the the planting, the dissemination, okay, there's something new that is coming into being. There's something new that is growing in your life, in your psyche. And when we have the first quarter moon, it's kind of like seeing the first little sprout coming out. Or maybe being like, hey, where's that first little sprout? And I'm not like feeling or seeing the results. And so especially within Virgo, there is a sense of looking at the purposefulness and the intention and what you're doing with your time and energy and focus. And I think that is especially relevant with this point in the lunar cycle connecting in to Saturn. Virgo makes an opposition to Saturn and Pisces, and then Virgo also makes a square to Mercury, Sun, and Venus in Gemini. So we have this very dynamic call to action kind of configuration. Oppositions and squares usually signal a time where there is something that we're called to do, or there is something being called forth within us or outside of us. Let's see, do I want to say anything else about that? I think that Virgo also is really about what do you want to do right now based on where you are at, and how can you make that purposeful and empowering? How can you approach things in a way that for you, from your heart, feels purposeful, intentional, and empowering for you? I think that when we're talking about Virgo, the sweet spot and the challenge for Virgo as an energy, as an archetypal energy, whether you have that in your chart or whether we're experiencing it collectively as we are with this particular point in the lunar cycle, is there is this balance between accepting what is and also holding space for further growth and development, and allowing space for both of those so that there is not a downward spiral into this isn't working, this sucks, or holding onto an ideal that is not here in the moment. So those are some themes that might come up. And I think, again, whenever we're talking about the lunar cycle, we're talking about our emotional energy. We're talking about our growth process, both psychologically and in the material world. The moon is about our ability to bring what is inside, whether that is our insight or our inspiration, our divine spark, bringing that into the material world. Okay. Now the last piece of this week, and then we'll pull some tarot cards. The last piece is we have Venus in Gemini making a square to Neptune in Pisces. And so this has been kind of this ripple effect. Is we had Venus making a square to Saturn. Last week, Mercury and the Sun are making a square to Saturn, and then they're continuing to travel forward in Gemini to make a square eventually to Neptune. So Venus is the first in the line to do this. And we kind of have this like contradiction sort of energy where these planets in Gemini, which Gemini is about having a flexible, movement-oriented approach to life. Gemini is really about exploring, sampling, and seeing like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this, and then I'm going to do a little bit of this, and that the sum, Gemini reminds us that the sum of the parts, wait, what is that saying? The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, is I think how it goes. But it's basically this idea that when we put together a multitude of things, that it's not just that we're adding them all together and then they equal something. It's the synthesis of all of the things that you are doing in your life, that you're feeling, that there is this beautiful work of art that comes out of that. And so it's not simply that you're just plugging along doing things, that there is this this actually is quite like this alchemical process where things get transmuted and change, and then there is an effect or a result that we could not necessarily have planned or orchestrated. Okay, I'm getting a little off topic. So there's this kind of, my point in saying that is that there is this flexibility to Gemini, and that we're getting to experience that during Gemini season. And a part of that with both Saturn and Neptune and Pisces is that whenever we have Gemini season, there's this flexibleness that is confronted with the practical matters of life, Saturn. Saturn being a reminder of our limitations, but also the Saturn is like the refining principle of doing things slowly over time and building via experience. And so this is here, this Saturn practical limitation, responsibilities, being thorough. But then also Neptune is here. And Neptune tends to be a symbol of the unpractical, the things that we cannot pin down, the things that we cannot see or touch or experience in a very tangible way. Neptune tends to have a sort of like dissolving or diffusing kind of effect. And so for this reason, Neptune is a symbol of spirituality, spiritual experiences, divination, idealism. It's like the vision, the ideal, the dream. Neptune is a symbol of dreams. It's also connected to the arts and film and shape-shifting, and also illusion and delusion, and altered states of consciousness. And so when we have Venus, this, to root this into this week in particular, we have Venus, the symbol of relationships, beauty, aesthetics, and even our connection to value, whether that is finances or self-worth or our sense of individual value and what we have to offer as a unique human being. That is sort of being diffused. And I think when we have Venus-Neptune, there's kind of this like, wait, what? kind of energy to it. It can kind of create, I don't know if confusion is quite the word that I'm feeling with this, but it's sort of like there's this unclarity. There's this sort of like where things are a little fuzzy around the edges. And so you might be like, Shawna, you just said, the Sun and Mercury is square Saturn, and that's about being practical, etc. And yes, that and this. So there can be both always, right? And I think it really depends what you experience more this week based on your birth chart, the people in your life, their birth charts, what's literally happening in your life right now. I think that Venus-Neptune, there's really this, because it is a square especially, so there's a call for something. There is something that we cannot ignore that involves negotiating between needs and ideals. And what your needs are, what your vision or your ideal is, and how your hopes and dreams and visions are coming into realization or not, and how you feel about that. I think that when we have Venus square Neptune, it's good to remember that you are in a process, and that there might be this week the sight of an ideal, or maybe even, I think supporting the other astrology that's happening, there might be a connection into like, oh yes, this is my ideal and this is what I want, as well possibly as regret or grief that is not here now. Or maybe that things did not work out in the way that you want to, or maybe it feels like things, and maybe this is, you know, literally true, that things cannot work out in the way that you really want them to. And I think that this returns us to Mars square Pluto, because Pluto is also a symbol of the healing function of processing things like grief, and even Pluto's also really connected to pre-verbal states of feeling, and things that are even in our DNA and intergenerational experiences that we have that are not of our own personal life experience that we carry with us. And so I think that this is really about, this whole week is about negotiating between possibilities and limitations, and in true Gemini fashion, sort of finding a place where we can experience both the possibility and the limitation. And if it feels like we're getting sucked into one focus that does not feel affirming and empowering, how can we notice that and find our way back to a place that feels connected to yourself and your authenticity and where you are now, and knowing that you are okay. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to pull some tarot cards for us. Other things. Oh yeah, okay, so other things that I wanted to say. We talked about this week being about insight, awareness, looking at where you're at right now, and where you're at right now is exactly where you need to be, and that is beautiful, and there is purpose and meaning in that, even if it doesn't feel like it. And I think there's this, again, this kind of like making peace with where you are and where you want to be, and that there can be space for both of those experiences. Again, with Mars-Pluto, I would be really looking at where you're feeling a strong desire for decisive action, and notice if there is a potential for burning a bridge or coming in too hot, and if there's a potential for saying or doing something that you may want to backtrack. Just, you know, if you can, give it just like a week or so. Just kind of see, give it a little time to ventilate and to breathe. Within the week, Mars will have moved away from Pluto, and then you can have sort of a different perspective, so to speak. Okay, so did I want to say anything else about that? Yeah, and then just looking into next week, we are moving into the solstice next week with the sun moving into Cancer. And then we'll have a full moon in Capricorn on June 21st at 6:08 p.m. Pacific time. So if you haven't already, find yourself in this, as best you can, a place of connecting to yourself, either through a rhythmic movement or through stillness. Just had a whole bunch of cards fall out. And if you're in this place, when you're in this place, maybe there's something that arises, a question, a topic, or even insight or guidance from yourself. Okay, so 3 cards as usual. First card is the Judgment card. See if you can see that there. So the Judgment card is, it always feels very Uranian to me. It always reminds me of kind of a Uranus transit, or especially like a Uranus opposition kind of transit. Judgment is about connecting to your authentic truth, especially when that is outside the social norm or outside what you think you should do. This is about doing what feels true, what feels right for you, and doing so in a way that is unhindered or unburdened, or maybe the better word here is that finding a way to not be restrained by all of the shoulds or social expectations or fears of judgment. And this a little hummingbird just flew like right here in front of the window. So I think this is also, I was going to say, this is also a symbol to remember that you have protection and you have support. Sometimes that can be externally, but also I really feel like it is support from your spiritual guidance team, your ancestors, whatever way in which you connect to the divine or to spirit. You have support, and I encourage you to call on that support, to call on your spiritual support in a way that feels safe and protected to you, of course, always. So, and I want to say about this card too, there's this, there's a person that's like in bed with a cup of tea, and then there's this angel. Actually, they both have angel wings, but then there's a larger angel being that looks like it's sort of comforting the person. And I feel like this strong protector kind of vibe. And then so they're inside, and then outside in the window in the background, there's this storm, and there's like this dark sky, and there's like lightning, and looks like there's even maybe like a tornado out there. So there's like what I'm getting from this is what's happening now is there's a situation somewhere that feels scary, that feels destructive even. And how can you find your own sense of care and support and encouragement to bolster yourself, to know that you are okay as you are? Okay. Second card is the Page of Wands. And the page is about information, messages, and it's also about travel or journeys, or it can be literally taking a trip, but I think it can also psychologically be psychological transitions or initiation or life transition kind of events. So there's something here around a transition or something changing, or maybe it is a message, I'm not quite sure. In this card in particular, this figure is, this person is standing in front of a cauldron, and they look like, they look like very intent on it. They're stirring the cauldron with a broom, and they look like, they have this kind of like Mona Lisa face to them, like they're slightly smiling, and they're just like very focused, very intent. So when I'm looking at this, there's like something cooking and you're intently focused on it. And when we're talking about the suit of the wands in Tarot, this is around passion, energy, and vitality. So there's something here that's cooking, or maybe changing or transitioning around your sense of vitality and your passions and your ability to move through the world with enthusiasm. And then the last card is the Four of Wands. This is actually a really beautiful and encouraging spread. So the Four of Wands is about celebration, it's about union, it's about coming together. At a practical level, it can even be like, you know, parties or something like this. It's about, it's a theme of coming together, celebration, like psychologically, we could say it's cohesiveness, feeling like you have a sense of cohesive, autonomous identity. I think sometimes we can feel like a sense of fragmentation or compartmentalization in our life. And when I see this card, this is about things coming together psychologically, where we feel more of a sense of cohesion or wholeness within ourselves. And at a more practical or mundane level, this is about enjoyment and celebration and being around people that uplift you and celebrate you. So when I'm looking at all of these together, the main thing is always the first card. So the first card is kind of like, okay, what's the topic? What are we talking about here? And the main thing is possibly, I don't know, you let me know how this sits with you. There's possibly a fear of judgment. There's possibly maybe a little bit of shame or insecurity or not feeling good enough. When I'm talking about this, I'm really thinking about the Venus-Neptune. I think that can certainly be a possibility. And I think also too, you know, when we're having a lot of transits that involve the sun, like we are this week, that can bring up these questions around, you know, who am I? Am I good enough? Things around self-esteem. And then, you know, we can sometimes feel bad about not feeling more confident. We can feel bad. We can feel shame about our shame. And so that's, you know, very normal, but totally unnecessary. And so there's something here this week that is being processed, that is being transmuted. And I'm really feeling into the Mars-Pluto situation here too. There's something around insecurity, shame, guilt, or feeling like simply like you need to hide yourself. There's something here that wants to be transformed around that. And this card is very supportive of you doing so. And it's a reminder that, okay, also, so that process, transmuting and healing situations around self-esteem, guilt, shame, insecurity, in my experience, that tends to be a relational process. Those things that like part of our psyche that got programmed that way typically happened via relationship. And it requires a relationship to bring a sense of healing. Maybe not requires, there's lots of ways to do things, but I think that what I know to be true in my experience is that relationship has a healing function. Again, you know, when it's done I'm talking about therapeutically or with a person or people that you feel a sense of psychological safety and containment with. So anyways, I'm getting off track here. My point is that in this card, there are two people that are together, and that we could say they're helping each other, and that the person that is feeling some kind of way, that is feeling insecure, or they're having a tough time, that they are being supported by someone else. And so this is really, you don't have to go through all of this on your own, that there is support here for you. And that this process is like an alchemical transmutation. When I say alchemical, this is that there is something that has changed, not just that it's different, but it actually, the substance of it becomes something totally different that it cannot unbecome. And so that there's something here that's being transformed in you, that there's something around comfort level with who it is that you are and showing up in that way, that is being transformed, and that there's a certain sort of also I would say like heat to that. There's like a burning off, or maybe I'm not super a fan of the word purification, because I think that is has challenging components to it, but it's kind of like this process of like the gunk or the stuff gets burned off, that the heat, and when I see heat, it's like I'm thinking like intensity. I'm thinking about Mars-Pluto, that the heat can sort of create this this process where what has felt heavy burns away. And then there's this like, make sure it's right set up. And then there's this sense of celebration and culmination and things coming together, this sense of wholeness or cohesiveness. Really beautiful spread for you and really encouraging. I hope you've enjoyed this week's astrology. Again, my name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a psychotherapist and astrologer, and it's always such an honor to share the astrology of this week with you. I always enjoy your comments and reviews wherever you leave those. Thank you so very much. If you want to learn more about me and my work, you can find me on my website, theastropsyche.com. And I am wishing you a wonderful week. I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.